Welcome to the Warrior Supercast, and this is the podcast that keeps you informed about what's going on in the Winton Woods City School District. I am here with Winton Woods Superintendent Anthony Smith. Thanks so much for coming to the studio today.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it very much.
We always have a lot to talk about with the district. Today, we have just finished going through an election, and while we feel like maybe we've heard plenty about the election, there's one thing on the ballot that's directly related to the Winton Woods district. So I want to talk about that and how that worked out. There was a levy issue on the ballot for the Winton Woods City Schools. That levy did not pass, so that's going to have some consequences. So could you start out by just explaining what this levy was for, what it's different than, misconceptions you think maybe people had?
Excellent, because I believe there are some misconceptions, and we need to just figure out how to make sure that the public gets the right information. Okay, this is not a debate, it's more of a communication plan. And one of the things that I want to make sure the public understood was, number one, this was not for the buildings. The buildings are already moving in the right direction, under budget, on time. The other main piece is the public passed a substitute levy several years ago. That's for renewals. That's not for new money. If you would go back and look at any history in your community, depending on where people live or where they grew up or where they went to school, usually levies come about 3 to 4 years. We have been extremely responsible with the funding from our taxpayers. We've not had a levy on the ballot since 2009, and for new money. I'm not sure how people would characterize their households, but for people who are working people or even people that are on some regulated fixed incomes, it's very difficult to go 12 years without an increase. And we have been very, very responsible for taxpayers' dollars. And I wanted to just kind of clean up, Dana, that the purpose of the Operation Levy is to fund a preschool program because the state does not fund preschool. And this is not a free preschool necessarily, but this is where parents would be on a sliding scale based on their income. The other one is, I know people had some questions about, well, why do you need school resource officers in your building? Well, mainly a lot of issues happen outside of the building, outside of every school. You look at Columbine, you look at some of the other things that happened, people weren't quite prepared. One of my colleagues in his district, they have 18 school resource officers, and it's a very affluent community. However, they're looking at it from a perspective of how to make sure that there's nothing that happens in the community, and if it does, how do you protect the children? It's not about safety issues inside. Our children are absolutely wonderful, and you could walk the building with me at any time, and I'm talking about anybody in the audience, and you'll see that they're very responsible, respectful, and they understand the essential ingredients surrounding education. The other one is our enrollment is increased by 14%. You can't have more students and have less opportunities for them. That's really unfair to the system. And finally, when you look at some of the parallels that happen across the country as it relates to busing, high schoolers need to be bused to school. And those decisions were made years ago by a very, very good board, but now things have changed. And we have an incredible board who believes that it's important for students to be transported. So when you look at the preschool opportunities, when you look at the increased enrollment, when you look at the busing, and when you put those things together and the safety, it tells you that there has to be more revenue generated in order to make these programs work.
And I think you explained really well, one of the things that people have a misconception about is that specific levies have to be spent on specific things. So sometimes we feel like didn't we just see one, or gosh, they're making shiny buildings, how come they can't use that money? And the answer is you can't. You can't
Right.
use that money for anything but the buildings. That was very specifically applied for and earmarked
Right.
for that.
And the other misconception of what the levy would actually cost a homeowner. So a valuation of property of $100,000 is $20 a month. And I know that for some families that might be big, but for others, I know that people could just figure out what do you sacrifice a little of to get a lot. These new buildings are increasing, your property value. And I don't know if people really look at it that way. We're coming in being a partner in this educational system. We don't want to hinder anybody or hurt anybody's opportunity, but at the same breath, I have to look out for what's good for the children and how many opportunities do I want to put in front of them. We have COVID, using a lot of money to purchase the technology. Parents are happy that their kids have a one-to-one, but that one-to-one device came from somewhere. It was a purchase item. And making sure that all the kids have the essential ingredients to move forward, that's what we want to do. Making sure they have Wi-Fi, make sure they can connect, make sure they can communicate with their teachers. Those are the other parts that make us the district of destination. So it does cost money. However, the trade-off is absolutely incredible. And we're going to have new buildings, and I have to be honest with you, the reason we push so hard for the buildings, and people say, well, Superintendent, that part is over, but they're all connected. They're connecting the dots. These buildings that are going to be high efficient buildings will stop me from pouring so much money and revenue into older buildings. Okay, so those buildings are not done yet, and I'm still making repairs as we speak. It comes from somewhere. I know that a couple of the buildings need roofs that we're going to keep. And I can't put the safety of the district's children at risk by saying, I know it needs a roof, I know it needs a window, but I can't do it right now because I don't have the funds. That's not acceptable. And then the final piece is there's some talk out in the community, and I'm hoping that people who hear this broadcast, it really puts it to rest. We have been very, very fortunate to start talking about creating this wraparound service for children, and it's going to be called the Community Learning Center. In the Community Learning Center, there'll be dental screening, vision screening, hearing screening, and right now, that particular Community Learning Center is going to be in the Green Hills community where the K-6 building is. And people say, well, why is it there? Well, it's there because you screen little kids. You don't really screen the big kids. The other thing is our incredible physician, our partner who does all of our football games, and a lot of people go to him for their own medical care, Dr. Stephen Wilson. He said, Superintendent, if your children need anything special, I'm across the street from the high school, okay? And then the final thing is we have to take one of our existing buildings because we're not going to go back to the taxpayers because at this point, we can't fit all of our children in the new buildings. So we're not going to go back to the taxpayers and ask for more money. We're going to work diligently to renovate the intermediate building, which is our best structural building, and put the preschool village in there. But guess what? That building is in Forest Park. And we're going to put a community learning center in that building to screen little kids again. So the objective, and I think it was important for me to bring that community learning center is going to be used for the residents as well, for medical issues, for needs, whatever they need. You know, traveling up the road to Mercy is great, but when you can have something close by, it helps the community. So the one that's going to be in Green Hills in the K-6, that's going to be for the community as well. The one that's going to be in the preschool village in Forest Park on Waycross, that's going to be for the community as well. And I think the community needs to understand we're bringing an essential ingredient to the community, not just the education reform, but a medical opportunity, because look at it, COVID-19 is wrecking the world. And if we can get people screened and assessed quicker because we have a facility, a community learning center, that keeps everybody safe and on point. And so I wanted people to understand that it wasn't just a place, it's for every place. But you have to support us so we can get it all done.
I think that's, you actually said so many important things. I kind of want to unpack a couple of them and make sure that we can highlight them. And one of them is the value a school district is whether your kid is in the school district or not.
Right.
A lot of times folks will look at that kind of thing on a ballot and say, well, my kids are grown, or although Dr. Capoletti's answer is, yeah, my kids are grown, but I want to give back to the district that made my kids so successful. So That's one answer to that. But aside from that, my kids are grown, or I don't have kids in the district, or I'm using a different schooling choice, I'm homeschooling, or my kids are in a private school. Regardless of all of those things, the district that your house is in affects the value of your house. Your home value is based on, partially, among other things, what school district you're in.
Absolutely.
So the excellence that Winton Woods has built up is benefiting every single resident in the Winton Woods School District. But the other thing that I have always found very important about the school district in the area that I live in is those are the kids in my neighborhood. The fact that they have opportunities and that they're getting screened and that they're getting what they need directly affects my neighborhood life. Because those kids are the ones playing in my neighborhood and knocking on my door and doing things like that. Whether or not mine is in that district or not, we don't live completely isolated as much as we feel that way right now during COVID. But the school district and the value of our school district really affects all of our lives on a regular basis. Now, you've just taken it to another notch, because now you said, let's talk about community learning centers, and let's talk about having screenings, and we're adding even other things that are not the traditional academic part of what we expect that we get out of our schools that will be enhancing the different neighborhoods. So
yeah, we wanted to just really step it up and not make this so one-sided where it's all about the schools receiving. Schools can give back. You just have to figure out how to strategize to make it happen. Yeah. This is our strategy for the community. Strong schools, strong community, you'll just change the whole highlight of everything that happens in every community that we serve. And you're right, it's where our children are. It's how we want to get the early screenings and the other opportunities. And then if we have elderly people who need services, that community learning center is there for them. So it helps everybody. It's a very circular opportunity that we need to take advantage of because many communities don't have it.
Another one of the things that was part of what you were saying, and I just want to make sure that we can hit it by itself, is the way the increased enrollment has affected your expenses. It's
yes.
great to see increased enrollment, and it's great, like you said, there was a renewal levy, but renewal is just existing expenses that were existing years ago when that one started. So there isn't another provision for increased expenses. And obviously we all have increased expenses right now.
You look at inflation. Inflation has its own variable when you look at it from any economic situation. But I can tell you from every person in this community that's part of Winton Woods City School District or not, some tax paid for your education. It was supplemented that way. Private, parochial, and every big thing in between. Because when you look at the DeRoth case in Ohio, schools are underfunded. We really shouldn't have to come to our taxpayers for it. We should be funded based on the scheme of this is how many students you have, this is the per pupil funding, and it's going to generate enough dollars to pay for your staff. However, there are some discrepancies, and we have to clean the discrepancies up by coming to our taxpayers. You know, the vote it wasn't an overwhelming no. It was close, and I just believe that people need to get the right information so they know how to vote consciously, that this could be a very good thing for your community, but we can't operate in the red. The state will not allow us to. And once we start cutting services, those services don't get restored. And a parent called me on the phone and she said, "Superintendent, tell me what you're going to cut." And this is a parent who's an advocate for the school who I know voted for it. When you start looking at essential ingredients like math, science, English, and reading, I can't tamper with those. I'll have to tamper with my co-curricular activities. I'll have to tamper with my enrichment, the arts. I don't have a choice. And I know that people in the public say, well, the first thing when something goes bad funding-wise in schools, they cut athletics and they cut the music. That's true. We are not an exception. We're part of the rule. But we can keep it all going in the same direction if we just put our heads together and figure out $20 a month for a $100,000 property, we can do this.
And we really see what the arts at Winton Woods look like and
Incredible.
what the athletics looks
Incredible.
like. And here at Waycross, of course, it's one of the neat things that we get to do is record so much of that. So we have really, over the years, watched the amazing skills that students in the music programs perform to, the level that they perform to, and actually, let's, in the middle of this levy talk, let's take a minute, let's congratulate on the athletics fronts, the football team.
Well, we had some exceptional and incredible opportunities. This is our first year in the league. We're in the East Cincinnati League, and one of the things that made it so interesting is we have the coach of the year. We actually have the offensive co-facilitator of the year. We have the defensive player of the year. We have 7 kids on first team, 3 kids on second team, an honorable mention kid, and this is our first year in the league. That was an extraordinary accomplishment. Our season ended at 10-1, okay? And the students that were part of this experience, remember, we had to do scientific work trying to keep them out of the balance of COVID and still keep them engaged in the field, and our cheerleaders, and our band. And so all of these things came together. It was so exciting. Yeah, we wanted to win the last game, but guess what? Last year, this time, I was spending thousands of dollars because we weren't in the league. Now we're local and we're competing with those in those opportunities, and more colleges get to see us. I had the pleasure of meeting with my fine arts director who wants to put on the play. And she says, we didn't get to put the spring play on because of COVID. She's now creating this process where how do we stream this, no people in the audience, and make this a real production. The reason I think that's essential, some child in this district is going to get a scholarship and an opportunity for acting, and so we have to make sure all those things are available. Opportunities must be available in the district. I don't want to cut one staff member, I don't want to cut one program, but when we don't have the funds, we have to operate with a level of integrity and do what we have to do.
And these are not pie in the sky ideas. You have watched students get scholarships out of your arts programs and out of your athletic programs.
Absolutely.
So just if anyone's listening to this thinking, yeah, we all say that this could be the opportunity for a scholarship.
No, we do it.
This really happens at Winton Woods. So
we actually do this. That's why it's very important for us to make sure that young people have exposure. And the more exposure, the better. When people get a chance to visit these buildings next summer, they're going to be excited about the opportunities inside the buildings for the children as well as for the community. It's a community project. Strong community, strong schools.
So since we've looked and we've talked about the importance of this funding, and because the levy didn't pass, the board has had to have some conversations about what's the next step. So what kind of things are they looking at?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting with the board yesterday afternoon, and they were very focused. They said, Superintendent, we owe this to the children. And so we're going to go back on the ballot May 4th and push the envelope that much harder, get our word out, get rid of some of the myths out there about what the levy is supposed to do. And I'm willing to go to churches, anywhere, storefronts, anything that people will have me to say, Superintendent, can you give us the compelling interest of why you want to do this? I will go to homes, I'll go anywhere we need to go so that people can hear that this story is about children and their opportunities, and we can't turn a blind eye.
And in previous years, you have been able to really connect to the community by going door to door even and explaining and answering questions. And of course, that's off the table right now. That's too much personal contact and that's not safe. So I guess I will take a minute to say, go to the Winton Woods website, go to wintonwoods.org, and also the Winton Woods Facebook page, because the Facebook page is chock full of information. Both of those places are really important to be going to because with COVID, what's going on in the district changes constantly. I could tell you what's exactly happening right now, and by the time you listen to this, there will have been changes depending on whatever the news is. But there's information there about the levy and about funding and any kind of questions you might have.
Well, you mentioned something about the safety aspects of COVID. And I did over 40 focus groups with my staff in groups of 7 just to get the intimate conversations. Tell me how you see COVID and how it affects your work. It took a long time to do it, but it was worthwhile. And I asked questions about the upcoming holidays. This focus group conversation started as early as September, but I wanted to know, Thanksgiving is coming around. Tell me how you're going to deal with that. And for the most part, people are saying they're going to try to keep some of their tradition because some of their family members are older. Keeping your tradition means more exposure. That's just the truth of it. And if you look at anything from the Center for Disease Control, we're barely getting through the effects of Halloween because those were intimate kind of social gatherings. Well, when you talk about the biggest intimate social gathering, it's Thanksgiving. So what we've done as a responsible district, we're actually, we're on blended days right now. So Monday and Tuesday, blue students, it's a blue day with our Winton Woods colors, of course. No. And Wednesday is a remote day, so that gives us a chance to do another deep cleaning of our building before new students come on Thursdays and Fridays. We've been doing that for several weeks. Well, right after Thanksgiving break, we're going to go back to virtual because we know there'll be some rate of exposure, and I want to make sure that my staff is safe and my students are safe. So the week of November 30th to December 4th will actually be a remote virtual opportunity. And for parents out there, we're sending out correspondences a week and a half in advance to let you know that we're going to go back to a virtual experience for a short amount of time until we lose some of these indicators and some of these essential things that are putting us in the high risk category.
I like how proactive that is. You're not waiting till kids get back from Thanksgiving and then you have cases. No. You're saying, you know what, this is what happens at Thanksgiving. We already know, let's just make the call now.
Dana, if we crawl through Halloween, can you imagine what Thanksgiving looks like? And I know that based on the Center for Disease Control, we didn't have as many spikes in the summer because those are outdoor activities. Thanksgiving is an indoor, intimate, close contact activity. So we're going to give our district a break, and we will be remote. So it's not that our educational system has stopped. We will actually be remote, working with the students. Teachers will be remote, students will be remote, and we'll still be connecting with them educationally through Zoom.
There are so many things going on right now. I feel like we need a longer program. But I think I just want to make sure we wrap up with keep an eye on the Winton Woods website, because you'll find out what's happening with the levy. You'll find out what's happening with blended learning and when it transitions to virtual learning, and all the details are at wintonwoods.org. So anything that we have not covered, you will find there, but you'll also find contact information so that you can send emails to the superintendent.
Absolutely, you can.
And ask him your questions, because there will be things that we did not cover, and you can get a direct answer, because that's something that you have been very
open,
careful about.
Transparent since the beginning. One other piece that I want to offer, I like the idea that I can offer opportunities where my treasurer can be involved. He's not here to defend himself, so I'm going to put him out there. But if you are not quite sure how to calculate your valuation of property based on the tax, if you send him an email, he can calculate it personally for you to let you know what your dollar amount is going to be. There are people all over the place saying it's going to cost thousands. That's not the case. And I think one of the things thank you again for inviting me on your show, but I wanted to dispel the myths. If you have questions or concerns about how the district is operating and which way we're going and what it costs, please contact us, because I will sit and give you the full version of facts every day.
That has been nearly almost a daily mantra throughout the election and all of the programs that we did here at Waycross before the election. And if you're getting your information through social media memes, that does not count as a source. I'm just going to let you guys know that. But the place to get information is directly from you,
here.
and you are very available.
We are your partner. We're a community partnership, And what's going to be more compelling than anything else is we need to give you the facts of how your district is doing.
You've made those things very available between the website, between a very active Facebook page with all kinds of information on it. So, and I appreciate that, because that's an easy way for me here to stay connected to everything that the district has going on.
Right. Very good.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And just one last reminder, wintonwoods.org, keep an eye on that, and then keep an eye out for Winton Woods Supercast programs, and we'll keep you informed here too.
So you putting in effort. Are you ready for the new